mañana, esperanza se arrastra de la cama. Despierta a sus hijos del sueño, los hijos que son su alma, lavando pisos de rodillas en una casa que nunca vivirán. Todo para los niños porque ellos de rodillas jamás trabajarán.
This is the Wizard News. The ACLU is leading the fight to end classroom censorship and protect the right to learn by filing the first case in the country to challenge a law that censored instruction about systemic sexism and racism in Oklahoma, surviving a motion to dismiss in New Hampshire, and obtaining an injunction to block the state of Florida from enforcing the higher education provisions of the Stop W.O.K.E Act. Efforts to silence discussions about race also invalidate the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color BIPOC students. Leah Watson, former high school teacher and ACLU lawyer, said, "Instruction about racism and sexism equips students to process the world around them and to live in a multicultural society." The push for classroom censorship ignited as backlash to progress towards racial justice following the protests in 2020, sparked by the murder of George Floyd. To curtail efforts to expand instruction and materials about racial justice and our discriminatory history, 45 states introduced bills to limit instruction about racism and sexism. These bills passed in 17 states. By January 2022, 35% of all primary and secondary K-12 students, or 17.7 million students, attended school in districts that experienced some form of a local campaign to end critical race theory in classrooms. To date, almost 700 efforts to exclude critical race theory have been identified at the local, state, and federal levels. In 2022, nearly 40% of classroom censorship bills targeted higher education. In a 2022 study, 87% of parents agreed that lessons about the history of racism prepare children to build a better future for everyone, as opposed to feeling that lessons about racism are harmful to children. Another study from 2021 found that more than 70% of Americans agreed that high schools should teach the impacts of slavery, 78%, and racism, 73%. All forms of race-conscious instruction have been erased from classrooms, despite their documented benefits for students. This includes instruction about racism and discrimination, distinct from critical race theory, and culturally relevant teaching techniques designed to build upon students' lived experiences. Educators report that they have restricted classroom discussions, curriculum, or content as a result of the laws, despite the desire from students to learn about censored topics. They described a culture of fear and intimidation in schools, marked by constant surveillance, scrutiny, and second-guessing. In accordance with Florida's Stop W.O.K.E Act, which prohibits instruction on systemic racism and sexism, the Florida State Board of Education introduced African American history standards that rewrite and whitewash history. These standards require teachers to instruct students that enslaved people developed skills that could be used for their personal benefit. Blame enslaved people for violence during massacres and misrepresent the role of the Founding Fathers in perpetuating slavery. Judge Mark Walker, who heard the case in the Northern District of Florida, described the Stop W.O.K.E Act as positively dystopian because it limits instruction to the viewpoints approved by the state, regardless of truth. Source: ACLU, September 7th, 2023.